Welcome to another episode of That's Mental TV. I'm so excited. I'm excited for every episode, but today I'm especially excited. Taylor Patterson, welcome to That's
Thank
Mental
you.
TV from the Waffle Podcast, which we should mention that is in the top 40 United Kingdom mental health podcasts. So it's so important, isn't it, mental health? And you're going to talk about your mental health journey, how it led you to the Waffle Podcast, and some words of wisdom and inspiration that you're going
I don't think I have that, but I'll give it a go.
I know you have. So how did we find each other, Taylor? We found each other on Instagram, social media. We exchanged some messages, and it was like, oh my God, you're a mental health advocate. Oh my God, you're a mental health advocate. And boom, blossomed, didn't it? So
Oh, definitely. I think I couldn't have put it better myself.
I'm so chuffed to have met you, actually, because you're just such a sound guy, very well grounded, and you've got a heart. You know, you're very passionate about
Thank
mental
you.
health, and you're doing a fantastic job. But
I
I've
appreciate
bigged
that.
you up enough.
Likewise.
I've bigged you up enough now, Taylor. You big yourself up. Who are you for our viewers? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Taylor, and I host a podcast called The Waffle Shop, which started as part of my own mental health journey and part of my therapy, really, because as men, we don't open up, we don't talk about things, and it can lead to a lot of further problems down the line. So not even just men, I think as a generation now we do that. We kind of think we can take on the world without any help. We're very independent. However, as much as I'd love that to be the case, it's just not realistic. And yeah, I got to a stage where I needed help. I was at a very low point. I was at rock bottom, to be fair. And I got to a stage where I just couldn't continue going at the pace I was. I had nothing left to give. I was exhausted, and I didn't want to continue living my life the way I was living it. So a lot of thoughts kind of crossed my mind, and I went down a very, very dark path. And without the support of my sister, my friends, my family, they helped me to get the help I needed. I reached out, got therapy, and then COVID hit. So thank you for that. So it was either stop my therapy sessions or keep my conversation going, keep being open, being honest, because going backwards wasn't an option for me. And yeah, the Waffle Shop was born, and bizarrely, people listened to it. Bizarrely, we went top 40 in the UK, South Africa, Finland, Switzerland, I think it was. And so yeah, it seems to be doing what I hoped it was going to.
You're being very modest there. You know, the Waffle Shop is much more the waffle, but you've put a lot of hard work and effort into this, and your promos, from your branding, you've put a lot of thought and effort into it.
Yeah.
So credit where credit's due. And
Thank you. I just didn't want it to be like, well, especially when it comes to mental health, like a lot of the conversations are they're very serious. They're very serious topics. And I think this is what scares people, not scares people, but it puts people off. No one wants to have a serious conversation. If you get that text message to say like, can we talk? Immediately your heart is racing. It's like you do not want to have those kind of conversations. But I wanted to put a little bit of my personality behind it. Like, yeah, I struggle with anxiety, post-traumatic stress, and I have struggled with depression in the past, but it doesn't define me. I'm still able to laugh and joke. I'm still able to go out with my friends. I'm still able to achieve, some incredible things. And I want to get that message across that, yes, you may struggle with these things, but they're emotions. They're very different levels, and people are affected in many different ways with very different symptoms. But there is light after these things. There is light during these kind of episodes, or however you like to call them. And just, I think it's just that feeling of like, you have got so much to give. And when people don't realize how much that they've got to give, Like, it annoys me. So that's kind of that's an added little layer of pressure I put on myself, just to make other people feel like, like from incredibly painful situations, there's actually a lot of beautiful things that can be born and created from that. Just don't give up.
Let's talk a little bit about the pressure that you mentioned, because you
Yeah.
are a young man who can put pressure, the world of the pressure, on his shoulders.
Yeah.
So where did your kind of anxiety and mental health, let's take a step back.
Yeah.
What were the pressures that contributed, towards your mental health journey?
So around 3 years ago now, my mum went into a hospital to have an operation. She had a slip disc on her back. Unfortunately, that operation went horrifically wrong. Well, yeah, it went wrong. There was a little bit of like just before that, where she came home, she was delirious. She didn't really know who we were, like me and my little sister, and I was having to like carry her to the toilet and stuff like that. And it was just like, something isn't right. But I thought it was her medication. But what was actually happening from the operation, her spinal fluid was leaking, and it collected around the bottom of her spine. When I eventually got her to hospital, and I left around about midnight, I think it was, or a little bit later, because my little sister was starting her GCSEs the following morning. So I came home, and then in the morning got my sister up, sent her off to do her first exam. And then I got a phone call from the hospital to say, Taylor, you need to get to the hospital. We need to make a decision in regards to your mom's brain. So what had happened in that time, the fluid had, where she was lying down, the fluid had traveled up her spine to the top of her brain and caused a blockage. So it basically starved starved the brain of oxygen. And then what followed that was just conversation after conversation with, neurosurgeons, everything, anyone you can name it, that we were taken into small rooms and just basically told, like, your mom isn't going to make it. With the amount of damage that had been caused, she'll be very lucky to live. We spent a lot of time in ICU, in obviously the hospital, and it got to a stage where they just couldn't see any signs of life whatsoever. But because it was halfway through my sister's exams, I practically begged the surgeon to, like, just let my sister get through her exams, just let her get, because I didn't want, as much as this has affected her, obviously, of course it would be, but it was just to give my sister that bit more of a chance, like, when it all finished. But giving my mum that extra bit of time, she actually started breathing by herself once they turned that life support machine off. And then after that, we were placed in various different hospitals. Like, we would by her bedside for like 12 hours a day, like playing music, asking her to squeeze our hand, like, to no reply. But then I think this is another thing as well, like, the hard work was starting to pay off. And it got to a stage where mum was able to leave the hospital, but she went into a rehabilitation unit. She learned how to speak again. She, use her hands very basically. She might not ever walk again, but, considering where we were 3 years ago, they told me she was going to die. Like, we have it like 3 times a year. She caught COVID, and it was just like, oh gosh. But there's one thing that you should never underestimate, and this is the biggest lesson I think I've took from that, is you never ever underestimate a woman. Because between my mom fighting this like death 4 or 5 times and coming out and still being able to like go to her daughter's 18th, speak to me 3 times a day, my sister coming out with like straight A's, B's in her GCSEs, and seeing her now like incredibly happy, like, I don't know how you do it, but like, fair play to you. But yeah, it got to a stage, as I was saying, that I took the weight of the world on my shoulders. I took everything that happened with my mum. I was next of kin. I was making all these decisions, trying to keep my career on the go, trying to look after the house. No one prepares you to own a house. Like, the different size bin bags, like TV licenses, it all, like, you just, like, where do you even begin? And then the pressures of having a 16-year-old going through prom, like all these kind of stuff that I didn't have a clue existed, but I'm now pretty much an expert. So if anyone needs any prom advice, just give me a shout. But yeah, it got to a stage where January this year where mum was in hospital again for aspirated pneumonia, and we were sat in those little rooms again. They said there's nothing we can do. Like, she'll be very, very lucky to survive this. And I hit a wall. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn to. Like, I was at rock bottom. I had nothing left. But it was actually me having that conversation with my little sister and my best friend that they probably saved my life. So I'm incredibly grateful for the support that I have.
Taylor, we've had a fair few conversations offline, haven't we? And I can certainly relate to the feeling of being told that your parents to prepare for the world. I can also relate to the feeling where you literally have to grow up overnight. And, you've had many elements to this where you've become a carer. You've had to take on the responsibility of becoming an adult. But, the one thing that we both have in common is the support network that we've had.
Yeah.
Important. Our support networks have held us. We've talked about praying, and your mum's got a fantastic community of people behind her praying as well, hasn't she?
Oh, definitely.
Tell us what happened next then when it got to that crunch point, because there's going to be people watching right now going, I can relate to Taylor, whereby I'm a carer for a parent, or I've had to grow up overnight because of family situations. So tell us about that conversation, that period of where it became too much for you.
I think what the biggest thing that I learned from it was, from being at rock bottom, was how many people are actually going through these type of struggles. As much as it may be worse than yours, it may be better than yours, but regardless of the severity of the situation, other people are going through these things. And it was quite heartwarming to me, knowing, not that other people were struggling, but it was more a case of, I'm not on my own. It was taking that first step and reaching out to actually made me appreciate like how much I give to other people and how much they rely on me for certain things. But by kind of breaking down that wall that I'd built up myself, it allowed me to feel, it was just a massive release. It was like I can finally feel like I could breathe. But it wasn't until I took that first step and opened up and allowed myself to have those conversations that it was, I don't know, it was just like a weight had been lifted. But you have got to want to help yourself. Like, you have got to be at that point where I need help. I know I need help. Now's the time to do it, because it's not easy. Like, I still have days now where I don't want to get out of bed. I log onto my work machine and I'm just like, nope, not today. But it's allowing myself that kind of time to process how I'm feeling, and how we're in this horrible generation where everything's just like a quick fix. Everything has to be done like right this minute, right now. There's an element of like not wanting to put the work in, but honestly, like just allowing yourself to breathe, take the time and focus, because it's not selfish in the slightest. It might feel like you're being selfish, but believe me, in the long run, I can only advise to. Obviously, I'm not in no way a professional at all. I'm only speaking from my own experiences, but it's just so important. I can't stress how how freeing it actually is, even just by listening, and by you opening up to someone else. It may seem like that first massive step to you, but by reaching out to a friend or family, whoever it may be, it gives that person who is actually listening to it that kind of confidence as well, that they can reach out, that their voice is being heard. So it's just stop, take a breather, reach out and talk.
Yeah, and I love that, Taylor, because, you know, a decade ago, when my late father's issues started, we didn't
Yeah,
have as many resources, and we
yeah.
didn't have the encouragement that we have now. So I just love, absolutely love what you said. It's giving me goosebumps. So moving on, Waffle Shop. Talk to us about the Waffle Shop.
Yeah, so obviously it became a platform for me for a very selfish platform, to be fair, which now I can stand back and say it wasn't selfish, because it seems to have created this bit of a community that help so many other people kind of open up and make them realize that, okay, well, they're not on their own. I've met some incredible people. It's given me so many opportunities that to learn about my own mental health, to learn about myself as a person and why I behave a certain way. And I get to speak to some of my favorite people. Like, if you would have told me at the beginning of the year that, you know, you would be having, to be blunt, like suicidal thoughts and not wanting to carry on, to then I'm sat on Zoom chatting to like Janine from EastEnders, or, you know, it's just proof that better things are on their way. And from those lowest points, like, trust the process, because never in a million years did I think I was going to have this kind of success that I've had now. And it baffles me, because I'm just like a normal kid. Like, I still record like in my bedroom, but the impact that I can very proudly say now that it's had on not only my life but other people's life is incredible. Like, it's quite often, well, it's very rare that I give myself praise, but I'm so proud of myself for this body of work and community that I've seen to have built. So I love it. Like, I'm in absolutely love with the whole thing.
Yeah, and I'm inspired by you and your
Well, thank
tenacity.
you.
Um, there's a lot of people that I interview, but not everybody has the right intention or heart.
Yeah,
You know, some are in it for their own gain, some are in it to become public speakers, and if that's what you want, fine. But actually, where your core, your heart is to help others.
yeah.
And because I'm the same, I kind of like go, wow, this is inspirational. So what you're doing is inspirational, Taylor.
Thank you.
So where can people find you, and what tips can you give to people as we wrap up?
So I'm on Instagram as at the Waffle Shop Podcast. I'm on Twitter. I'm all social media. If you type it in, it should pop up.
Yeah.
Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts. I think now if you ask Alexa to play the Waffle Shop Podcast, it will start playing, which is insane in itself. But I think my advice would be, regardless of how you're feeling or how much of a, you know, sometimes we feel like we're burdens to people, but believe me, like my friend said it to me back in January, that I'd rather be reading your text messages than reading something out at your funeral. And that has stuck with me since that day. And like, yeah, you know, regardless of the situation, a problem shared is a problem halved. Reach out, no matter how big nor little, because believe me, I guarantee you will be surprised and slightly overwhelmed with the support and response that you get. And if you don't, just message me. We'll have a waffle about it.
I love it. I think this deserves a virtual high five.
There you go. I love that.
You've been listening to Taylor Patterson from the Waffle Shop. I would recommend these podcasts. So light-hearted, relatable, and just damn inspirational. Thank you, Taylor, for joining us, and we will see you next time.
See you soon.